the Around the NFL podcast. Can think of one fullback who was better than John Kuhn.
From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. I am Dan Hanzus. I got heroes here. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. I mean, yes, John Kuhn was a great fullback for the Packers. But the greatest of all time, Jim Brown, who passed away late last week. Marc Sessler, you had the obit up at NFL.com, and obviously you have your Browns history and whatnot. So we're going to get to a bunch of stuff today, including we're going to do a little running back draft in honor of Jim Brown, the greatest back of all time. But curious your thoughts on the loss of Brown at the age of 87.
I mean, I know I kind of hold back from mentioning my own writing and stuff on the show. It's not the easiest thing for me to do, but it was one of the few pieces that I wrote. It was, these obits are written prior to, so that they're ready to go. And I spent 3 or 4 long summer days researching as deeply as I could, all these various elements to Jim Brown, who, it's almost where do you even begin? Because I think he lived 3 or 4 completely different lives that all intersected. But it's funny because I heard Gerald McCoy on Good Morning Football talk about the fact that when he was young, he knew Jim Brown as an actor. He didn't, and then his dad had to tell him as a young boy, no, this is actually the greatest football player of all time, who is now an actor, who was also an activist, who also did incredible work for the black athlete in general. And there's just, I think, Greg, there was a biography that we almost purchased once that he wrote, and his own story, and it is filled with incredible anecdotes. I mean, there were ups and downs with Jim Brown. There's no question about it. But the thing I came away with was just that, it's kind of crazy that in sports today, just from the sports angle, that we have better athletes than we've ever had in our lifetime, easily. And football players are coming out looking like robots and machines. And it's why haven't we had 25 Jim Browns at this point? And there's just one. There's literally, you'd have to composite other running backs and athletes together to even equal Jim Brown. And I know it's easy if you're younger to look at the black and white cut-ups, the tape, and forget that we don't have today's technology where you could see him from so many different angles and doing things that completely are improbable from a physical angle, and that no one ever dominated him. He dominated everyone, and it's he had the complete and utter respect of everyone he ever played against, because there's no human like Jim Brown.
No player like Jim Brown. I mean, I guess that's how you measure in terms of on the field greatness, and then everything in terms of how large of a life he lived off the field. But we're just talking on the field, that is how you get the name GOAT. I think there's not much of an argument that the greatest players in football history are Jerry Rice and Jim Brown. And I think you put those in some order. And you could get in there with Lawrence Taylor, or you can start talking about quarterbacks. But I just think in terms of, if you judge it based on the eras that they were in and the domination that they had, Jim Brown and Jerry Rice are really the 2 best answers. And Jim Brown, to me, is the better answer, because I'm someone that is more about how truly dominant you were at the time in your peak, not about longevity. And Jerry Rice had all of that too, which is why both answers are great. But there hasn't been another player like him. And you remember, look, he was 30 years old when he retired. And so it seems like he left some food on the table there, because he was at his absolute peak still when he retired, but he was going to go do the Dirty Dozen. It's like he was going to do a classic movie. And any athlete that's ever tried to make that transition, Jim Brown was doing it, and he was doing it at a time where he was making a lot more money not playing football, so it made absolute sense. But just in terms of what he did, and we can get into off the field too, but I think Bill Belichick said it, just he wanted, and we can get to it, he just hoped that people growing up today would understand what a titanic figure he was on and off the field.
Yeah, he was such a big, in some ways, complicated figure, and what he did on the field no one ever approached. He was bigger and stronger than everyone. You watch those videos, like it is those old NFL films clips of him just dragging people around, and how many players used to say it's like you don't tackle Jim Brown, you just grab him and hold on until somebody comes to help. Like he was at that level. He averaged over 5 yards a carry and set so many records. And and then it's the same guy that in 1967 organized the Cleveland Summit, which was at the time a huge deal, which was a gathering of the nation's most prominent black athletes. Bill Russell was there. Just watched a documentary on Bill Russell that really dug into that and how important that was when it happened. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was there. Muhammad Ali was tied into the fight, his fight against serving in Vietnam. And he worked in Los Angeles to work with, against gang activities in the inner cities. But he's also the same guy that had domestic violence issues that followed and plagued him and his reputation throughout his life as well. In addition to all the Hollywood stuff, his career as an actor, it's one of those huge lives that crosses over in so many places. And when this podcast was just starting out, and it's like embryonic form, when we were the ATL Debate Club before Greg and Wes even hit the scene, we would be tacked on to the back of the Dave Damashek football program. And Mark, I know obviously with your connection to the Browns, it was a highlight of your career, and it was mine as well, because I still don't know how it happened, Mark. It was so long ago. It was this month, 11 years ago. It was in 2013. We did a 20-minute interview with Jim Brown, who came into the old Studio 66 in Culver City. And I wrote this on Twitter, like, it didn't feel like we actually even had a podcast until Jim Brown was talking to us. And I'll never forget, like, how, we were noobs and we're just learning how to even talk into microphones. And he treated us with respect. And I remember after it was over, the day wrapped up and I think we went to Rocco's. And we just sat belly up at the bar and we were like, can you believe that just happened? Like, we just interviewed Jim Brown and it was cool. And he respected us in the conversation.
It was like completely surreal because for obvious reasons. And I mean, we went back and listened to it. Someone very loyally went and found it because it's not easy to find that stuff these days. Those old podcasts, but listening to it, like my voice, like literally was like completely different and a bit gravelly.
I want to hear this now.
Well, I think
let's put it on the back of the of the show.
We'll add it so they can hear it. But the thing about him was that I thought some of our most interesting like conversation with him in that bit was about Hollywood, about other things. Like the football part is there. I mean, this is a guy that had 1,500 yards in a 12-game season. He had 1,800 yards in a 14-game season, never missed in a game ever, the only running back to average over 100 yards per game in his career.
Led the league in rushing yards, just while we're throwing stats out there, every season of his career except one.
But
that's just insane.
No, and like in that, because, we dug into football movies and why they're a bit wanting and lacking, to say the least. But he was in Any Given Sunday, and so we just sort of asked about, as an actor, you're suddenly going up with Al Pacino, and he'd been in a bunch of films by then, but he just sort of talked about how, like, his approach, and you can listen to it, to why he knew he'd succeed alongside Al Pacino was kind of everything about the competitor he was. And some of his best stories from his earliest days were when he was on the Syracuse, when he was in Syracuse, or when he was on the Cleveland Browns, and they'd go down south. And it was like the hotel manager for the Cleveland Browns would say, well, we have a different hotel a couple cities away for the African-American members of the team. And Jim Brown would always be like, no, you don't. And then Paul Brown would chime in and say, absolutely not. You don't split up the Cleveland Browns. We're here together. But they dealt with that and to such a degree early on in his career. And I think that I think some of his ire and anger, where some of that came from, was the inequality that he talked about from the minute he was born. And like other athletes talk about the fact that even when you succeeded early on in your career as a black athlete, that people would just still doubt you because of the color of your skin. But they were like, Jim Brown was undoubtable, and he kind of changed sports for the black athlete forever.
And you mentioned lacrosse, because he is like a Paul Bunyan Babe Ruth type figure, and one's real and one's not. Like Jim Brown, sometimes it felt like he wasn't even real. A lot of people believe him to be the greatest lacrosse player who ever lived as well. Like, and you
he
think
said
about
that was his true love,
right?
that he loved it more.
Can you imagine
Yeah.
Jim Brown rampaging on a lacrosse field, scoring 400 goals?
You're in your bare legs with like no padding below the belt.
A lot of exit velo on those throws. I don't know if they use that terminology there.
That book I mentioned was, or that Mark mentioned, well, at least that I was thinking about, it was actually a memoir by a guy named James Toback, who has his own problematic history. And it was called Jim, the author's self-centered memoir on the great Jim Brown. And it related a period in James Toback's life, who became a director. He did that Tyson documentary that was pretty well known, where Jim Brown and him were living together. And they were just like kind of playing basketball in the yard all the time, and just like sort of what that was like. And it's about James Brown, but it's about this guy's experience. And it was a very interesting look at like early 70s Jim Brown. And because he was one of the most prominent advocates and activists for black athletes that there's literally ever been, until basically his dying day. Like, he was working for gangs in California, like trying to help them out. And he famously, like, you know, he would leave his door open so that the guys could like come and stay there if they wanted. And he never gave up that fight. And then, and you did mention it, Dan, it's part of him. And this is what Belichick talked about. Belichick said he hoped that his legacy wouldn't just be remembered for the bad things, for his violence towards women, which was repeated. And that it was so black and white, like all of these great things that he did in the world and the type of person he was to the people that meant something to him, and that he didn't try to deny. I mean, he never came to terms with what happened with all of these women over the years. And they were young women, and they were rape allegations, assault allegations, you know, throwing the woman off the balcony, which Spike Lee included in that documentary, which is a great documentary too. And I do think it's worth sort of thinking about that this person, like, that was both of him. Like, there's no like take to have about that. He was that person, and he never, and I listened to Bomani Jones talk about James Brown. It's really good if anyone wanted to listen to his podcast too. So I'm not trying to bite him here. He talked for 25 minutes about it. And there's no way to, there's no take on what he was, in terms of how afraid he was to ever come to terms with his violence towards women, because he never apologized. He never took a step back or showed any awareness of all the wrong things that he did. But he still was living all this other life at the same time, doing all of this productive stuff, and that was just who he was. And I think to Belichick's point, I don't think all the rest of it's getting forgotten, and I don't think that's getting forgotten too. It's just like that was the Jim Brown story, and that was like a very unfortunate part of that story. And it's a big story. It's like a Babe Ruth type story, like
right.
you said.
I mean, it was violence against men as well. That's one thing he always said too. Is like, you know, he had an issue on a golf course with a friend. He was a very competitive person. He would get physical, and that was something he struggled with. But their story is huge. He's a huge imperfect person. We're all imperfect. Brown, no exception. Dead at the age of 87, and that he was on the ATL Debate Club, Mark.
I do remember one thing about that. One other last thing about that interview, because I think it helped that it was late May that we had him on the show, that there was less happening at NFL Network, and we were happening that day.
The car wash wasn't too crowded.
Yeah,
that day.
And so he gave us a lot of his time. But at one point, because I think we were atypical with what we were trying to do, and he's like, "You boys, you got some funny questions." Like, he just sort of like actually, and like it wasn't even on the air, I don't think, but he just sort of said afterwards.
I think it was after, and I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to it yet, but I will, along with the audience, hopefully. At one point, I think I called him audacious, and like he paused and he was like, "I like that. I like the way." And I remember it was just like, whoa, just floating out of that building that day. All right.
Good job on the obit, Mark.
Yes,
everyone
Mark.
should check that out. All that work
thanks.
you did years ago is now out there.
And that dropping like on a Friday.
Yeah, it made me look like I was like absolutely one of the busier journalists at NFL.com that day, which was not totally true, but I had been in the past.
We don't need to share it. Like, maybe you were. Maybe you looked Friday morning, you looked at it, crumpled it up, and started over. That's the way I like to think of it. It's like she wanted to come out fresh.
No
Now
doubt.
we're talking how the sausage gets made. Oh.
All right. Let's get to other far less important NFL news. But listen, this is a round of the NFL. Hit it.
Jimmy Brown as Napoleon Jefferson.
Jefferson is any man fighting for recognition against the odds, says Brown. I think I understand him pretty well.
All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, before we learned of the sad news about Jim Brown on Friday, I had a chuckle internally when I checked in on my laptop when I woke up Friday morning, and the top headline at ESPN.com was Mitch Trubisky nearing extension with Steelers, and I was like, that's kind of funny considering like the ecosystem there now. And then about 5 hours later, this is still before the news of Brown had broke, there it was, still number one in the stack. It was a slow news day on Friday because Mitch Trubisky is not the future in Pittsburgh, but they like him. They like him enough to keep him around because Omar Khan announced on the Pat McAfee show, and then Ian Rappaport followed up with some more information that Mitch Trubisky is staying with the Steelers on a 2-year extension. He will be Kenny Pickett's main backup in 2023, and he's under contract for 3 seasons. I have no idea how much money, Greggy, that means. I'm seeing it on a report here that it's over north of $19 million, whatever. But he is the guy in the building. They like him, and he's still there.
Yeah, they wanted to lower his 2023 cap number, and the only way to do that without cutting him would be, or maybe even including cutting him, would be to give him an extension. But they really do like Trubisky, so it kind of makes sense. But essentially, they don't like putting pay cuts out there because it makes the agents look bad. But I'm sure it's essentially a pay cut, masked as an extension. But also they got him at a pretty good rate for a backup. And I guess Trubisky's kind of cool with just like, all right, I like this place. I'm just going to be a backup.
I remember his last, I don't know if he came back later at some point via injury, but he was benched in the middle of the Jets-Steelers game last October because he was playing dreadfully. I
will defend Mitch Trubisky.
All right, go ahead.
2023 play. It's 2022 play for the rest of my life. It'll be the least popular or mentioned take ever. I thought he played pretty well for the Steelers.
I thought he had streaks where
How many games? How many starts are you talking?
He played 5 games. He started 5 games.
He had some interceptions.
He threw 4 touchdowns in 5 games,
right,
and 5 interceptions.
He threw some interceptions for sure, but I think just play to play, it was maybe some of the best, if not the best, Mitch Trubisky I've seen.
See, we know what's going on.
Yeah, what's up?
We're getting the next iteration of super milquetoast average quarterback that Gregg.
No, I've always been very anti as of you.
Yes.
I'm just saying I could see why he's a good backup.
I think the thing was a year ago when they were trying to prop him up as he's our starter until Kenny Pickett is ready, and anyone viewing him as a starter, that agitated me always. But as a backup, totally cool with it, and I think that he's totally cool with it.
Right, that's an interesting part of it. That I think he's due $19 million over the next 3 years, which is
seems like a lot of
6 per year, 6 or 7. No, that's like the backup rate. So it's he was fine locking himself. I'm gonna check PFF. I swear I did not do this. Ooh, and I knew it. I knew they'd be good because I gotta say I kind of tend to be on the same page with PFF. A lot of their grade. They have him too high, but he was the 15th ranked quarterback according to PFF out of 41, exactly tied almost with Kenny Pickett. That made some sense to me.
To the eyes,
you want Pickett. He's a rookie, and he's getting better, blah, blah, blah. And to the eyes, I would not put him in the top 15. But I'm saying he played better than he used to play.
They had their schedule. It was the 4th start of the season where he got benched. And they were coming off a bye in week 4. And they stuck with Trubisky. I always thought that was interesting because that would have been the time where you hand it over to Pickett in week 4 after that bye. But they brought him out for week 4 and then benched him at halftime. And then that was when Pickett took over, and he was good. He got better and better as the season went along. And we'll see. According to Mark, the Steelers with Kenny Pickett will be a potential juggernaut.
I believe they'll be a playoff team because it's like they win 9 games when you don't buy into them.
12 is
a big number. I don't hate it. We'll see what happens.
Speaking of Kenny Pickett, when he came into the league, it was Ben Roethlisberger on the way out. Roethlisberger, has so many records with the Steelers, multiple Super Bowls. And Big Ben, he admitted on his podcast, Footballin' with Ben Roethlisberger, that he told Pickett face-to-face that his initial reaction was that the QB would struggle, and he was being very upfront about being okay with that.
I'll be completely honest, and I'll be super transparent here, and I'm going to get blasted. I probably shouldn't say this, but who cares at this point? I wouldn't say that I wanted Kenny to necessarily fail, but when someone comes to replace you, and you're like, I still feel like I had it. I hope he doesn't come ball out, because then it's like Ben who, right?
I mean, he definitely didn't have to say this, but I guess Big Ben is in retirement mode now and doesn't.
Well, he's got a podcast, so you need to. This is a smart move, actually. I know I'm a little concerned that he's spelled footballing F-O-O-T.
Bowlin.
Yeah, B-A-L-L-I-N. I'm assuming that's not how he perceives it to be spelled, but he's affectating the words there a little.
He is just saying what most people would be in that same situation. But Greg, I'll just tee this up for you. Go ahead.
No, I like a little more transparent. But
okay.
I think it's a human. He even went on about it, just saying look, it's just a selfish part of me, probably. But he was worried. That's him being real. So if he's bringing that sort of reality, I might have to check out Footballin' with Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know. I've got a pretty deep bench of podcasts I listen to. Almost no football. I like the audiobooks. It would be tough for Footballin' to crack in. But I think it's a human reaction. I think
How about
a lot of people feel that way. They weren't going to say Ben who, by the way, regardless. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame, and he's got his own complicated legacy, to put it mildly.
How about this? Give it one shot. Give it one shot.
Okay.
Check out the next Footballin'.
Maybe I'll take the one with Kenny Pickett. That sounds at least okay. I would listen to.
Although I would
Kenny
say
Pickett's on the show, right? Or is he just talking?
You know what? I let us know, because the way he phrased that, it sounded like he was talking about Kenny Pickett, who wasn't there. But later on, it seems like he is.
I think Kenny Pickett's there.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett's there. He's absolutely there. I've confirmed it.
As a professional podcaster. I'd love to hear, by the way, first of all, what Pickett said in response. As a professional podcaster, I would say maybe a more interesting episode is after this went viral. What does Ben have to say in the next ep?
Yeah.
So you have two options, and you might check out 2 full episodes.
We know a couple podcasts that just went 1 episode, and then they couldn't. They weren't able to craft a second one, so that it can go in that direction. I love what he said, because first of all, what athlete wouldn't kind of feel that way?
I think some would. I think some are secure enough in themselves that they're not really wanting others. But I think
they may not.
That might be the minority. I think that's the minority. Right. But you said who would? I think there are plenty of people that's probably not in there.
I kind of would want my quarterback to not want the next guy come and outshine him. That's all.
It's kind of like that you hear about this all the time with bands and recording artists. You have your whole life, Mark, to record your first, and then 6 weeks, 3 months to record your second.
Yeah,
that's a lot of pressure.
Season 2, basically.
In other quarterback news,
I don't get why that analogy applies here.
Listen, Mark said it earlier and referenced something else, and I was just adding on to that.
That's how this works.
Joe Burrow is another quarterback, an excellent quarterback, an incredible quarterback. He is not under second contract yet. He's still on that rookie deal. It's that time where Cincinnati would hypothetically get a deal done. The Bengals don't have a great track record as big spenders, and now here they have a transformational quarterback just entering his prime. It is time to pay up. Here is what Burrow said in recent comments, talking about his contract situation and also the idea of keeping the Bengals core together of playmakers. Many people believe they have the best wide receiver group in the league, for instance. How do you balance getting paid the way you deserve to be paid with keeping your teammates around you?
Yeah, it's definitely, whenever you have guys on the team that need to be paid, that's always on your mind. You want that to be a focal point, and so we're working to make that happen.
Burrow delivered those comments one day after the Bengals started phase 2. I guess, is that a thing? Phase 2 of team workouts. It's OTAs. 20 teams kicked off OTAs this week. And yes, T. Higgins is there. Jamar Chase. Keeping those guys together, Greg, feels like would be a win-win for Burrow and the Bengals.
It was really striking doing the projected starters for the AFC North, how long this group has been together on both sides of the ball. Like the top 5 names, which is Burrow, Mixon, Chase, Boyd, and Higgins have been the exact same for 3 straight years on that projected starter series. And then a lot of the defense has been the same too. And that's just so. By the way, sorry, Ali. If you're out there listening, the projected starter series, I was way ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm struggling. The Tybee trip did not help.
We got to talk Tybee.
With
Let's
your,
talk
with
after
your
this.
deadline.
I'm a little behind. So the rest of it is coming. He's only got 2 teams in the AFC North. There are 4, but the Bengals are well positioned to be the best team with that sort of continuity, and I like that.
I would just suggest that you maybe just hit him up on text because I would gamble.
Our digital features editor Ali Ben.
Yeah, I would gamble he's not listening to this episode.
That's true. I did send an apologetic Slack, but sending 2 of the 4 teams is sort of an apology in itself. You're recognizing that you're coming in not really what the editor's looking for.
And to your overall point, looking at the stability of that core, that doesn't last. So there's a ticking clock here.
This is the year. That was my takeaway. Like, I know some of them will be back, but this is the year.
And Joe Burrow famously said at the end of last season, "Our window is my entire career," which I love that. I love the swag that Burrow possesses, and to a certain extent, he's right. But this particular team, which is absolutely championship worthy and nearly did it a couple years ago, just like the Bills. A big storyline in the AFC. I'm not breaking news here. The Bills and the Bengals have a major crossroads season ahead to get over the hump, or else.
And I don't really want to hear about, Cincinnati being a mom and pop franchise that Joe Burrow is going to suddenly have to go the quasi Tom Brady route where you take way less money than you should for big chunks of your career.
And he shouldn't.
Well, he's not married to Giselle, so he can't lean on someone else's fortune. I don't know what's going on with his life.
I think Tom did fine in his
Yeah, but I mean, like Peyton Manning, they found a way to give Peyton Manning new weapons in waves throughout his entire career. I think Brady played with less, and he tried to, salvage that with a couple big signings by taking less money. But every one of these quarterbacks are just going to become the highest paid player in the league. There's no way that Burrow does not. How would you justify that if you're his agent?
Right. I think he will. And you're right. If you can't afford Joe, go sell your team for $5 billion. And then you'll have a lot of money.
Finally in the news, the NFL, man, we talk about it every year. At a certain point, we should probably just not talk about it anymore because the NFL onside kick alternative once again stalls in the Senate. No vote expected at the league's spring meeting.
The Senate. It went all the way to Washington. It's a lot of commanders.
A lot of commanders in Washington. Tom Pelissero
A lot
reports.
of commanders in Washington, D.C. and the Pentagon.
I love that we played it last week. I just love Theismann circling back on it and just saying, hey, listen, we have new ownership coming in. And Snyder and me, I don't know if they were boys, but Snyder was cool with Theismann being a major figurehead.
Yeah.
This would not be the time to go all Eric Dickerson and just start, taking out the blowtorch and just saying whatever you want. Theismann saying, I'll respect this current ownership group if they want to keep the Commanders. If they say they don't want it, I'll be on that radio show again, burying the name.
Well, it's a wise way to handle that, which is not how I've always felt about Joe Theismann's approach to things that are verbal.
Tom Pelissero reports the NFL owners tabled the Eagles' proposal to create a 4th and 20 alternative to the onside kick. So it wasn't voted down, but, quote, further discussion needed.
Are they just giggling annually when this comes out?
Yeah, it's been 3 or 4
4 straight years now.
Wow.
And Pelissero caps his tweet, the Pellraiser, with a long-running debate continues. Is it really a debate? Or is it something that the Eagles just need to take the L?
Might be that time.
It's got some support, and I think it gets 1 or 2 new teams. I want to keep it going.
Okay. I mean, yeah, it doesn't really matter. You could also dress a third quarterback again. The other huge news out of the owners' meetings.
Well, which is exactly what the Steelers will be doing with Mason Rudolph, who was brought back as well.
Look at that. Covering bases.
They still have Mason Rudolph, too.
Yeah, he didn't get another job, and
they brought him back.
He was unhappy with the team last year. Thought he should have been the number 2.
No team loves their underperforming former starting quarterbacks more than the Pittsburgh Steelers. No need to update anything.
You're right.
They did not approve the commander sale, and then we're waiting. We'll update it. Thursday is our next show. I have a feeling they're gonna make it flex scheduling for TNF will get passed, I feel like, in the next day or two. And with new restrictions, they're proposing now that you need 28 days notice. So you got to get and you can only do it twice in a 4-week span. So it's really kind of almost a test trial to do it. But I have a feeling that'll pass.
Well, that's for fans too.
I still don't like it, though. I still would say nothing is better, but we'll see. Don't need to get ahead of the news. We'll find out.
We shall see. Did you want to add something, Mark, before we get a break?
If it would help if the fan knew that suddenly, hey, game X is completely shifting day and time. I'm flying there or I'm not flying there.
They're giving him a month
you get a
notice.
Month. That feels.
It's a ding shot. You ever try to book a flight inside a month? Sometimes it's a little bit of a.
It's a challenge.
I've got to book a hotel. Are there hotels available inside a month in urban centers? I don't know.
Depends on the.
I'm not sure if I've literally ever booked a hotel or bought a flight in more than a month. I've exclusively done it last minute, which is a problem that I'm working to address, but it hasn't had a lot of progress.
That is a Rosenthal move. And can I just add one more thing?
Can you imagine living with me?
More and more we are seeing, I don't know if this is just, it feels that way, but doesn't it feel like in the last, let's see, in the 10 years we've been doing the show, NFL stadiums have more road fans than ever. Like, it feels like a traveling to see your team is there's been an uptick in that realm, and other fan bases invading stadiums. It's not just happening in LA. So yeah, there's a lot of people impacted by a schedule shifting on short notice like that.
Well, you've got a vastly larger group of fans rooting for terrible teams, and it gets to become, even if they're doing all right, they'll sell those tickets on the secondary market, which is a little tougher when we were like 10 or 12. You had to stand outside the stadium and try to get someone to buy them.
And why is all this happening?
All those 10-year-olds outside of the stadium.
Well, no, you're with an adult, potentially.
Tickets for the poor.
I got Yankees tickets outside of the stadium a few times. Did you never?
Oh, yeah. We did buy the old
good old days.
Tickets in the front.
Good old days.
I got two. You selling? Got two. Anyway, why is all that happening with the schedule shifting? Follow the money. But you know that. Take a break. We'll be right back.
Jim Brown coming to the 40, 45, 50. Jim Brown down the sideline. Jim Brown is going for the score.
Ah, yes, the great, iconic Jim Brown, Hall of Famer in many eyes. Although labeled a fullback, regularly, routinely called the greatest running back who ever lived.
Halfback back in the day also worked. It sort of covered both.
One of the conversation points in the ATL interview, which you could check at the end of the show, is we brought up very original. We asked him about running back Mount Rushmore. And at that time, coming off a 2,000-yard season, he said, there's no brainer. My dear friend, Adrian, should be on that running back Mount Rushmore. And that's an interesting take. I wonder if Brown thought that 10 years on, but Peterson, I think, in my lifetime, I think would have been there, is there. But, yeah.
Would be on the Mount Rushmore of your lifetime.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, because Brown's lifetime,
here we go.
I think
Barry Sanders, AP, or all day.
I would put Tomlinson and
LT.
Falk ahead of Peterson, but I think he would be my fourth.
Walter Payton?
Well,
this is in your lifetime.
Oh, well.
So you're watchable.
Since like early 90s. And do I want to put Emmett on there? I don't know.
No.
But
Emmett, yes. What?
I mean, not over any of those guys, though.
Barry.
They just were better.
Peterson, LT, and...
For me, Marshall Falk is the fourth. I think that's my four.
Falk? Huh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I watched Peyton, but I didn't watch. I watched the end of his career. But Emmitt Smith absolutely would be on
who you're
Zach Zenner. Zach Zenner.
Oh, yeah.
Pen him in there. Penner the center.
We collectively sort of forgot him.
Anyway, on the topic of running backs and Jim Brown, why don't we do a little fun off-season seggy? Let's do a draft of current running backs. We'll put together, how about this, Eric behind the glass? Let's put together groups of 4? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll put it to a vote and who has the best group of running backs. And then based on that vote, the winner gets to gloat and the person who comes in
No, because
what?
You can't always trust the votes. I remember we did some exercise like this recently, And I think you won and I lost.
Right. So you couldn't trust the vote in that case.
Right. I still believe
Got
the
it.
team was
Sounds
better.
very reliable, actually.
Right. Okay.
Potentially.
So anyway, if I win, for instance, I will gloat. If Greg wins, he will not gloat because the vote isn't true to what's real. Does that cover both sides? I don't know.
I might gloat anyways.
Okay, good.
Sounds fun. Wait, that means
that's we're having fun.
if we're doing that, then we got to go snake drafting.
Snake it up, and I'm gonna, out of respect, and Greg, if you want to disagree, because you're very competitive, just incredibly so. I want to say, Mark, as the longtime Browns fan, Jim Brown, obit writer, we can give him the first overall pick.
Sure, let's do it.
Why don't we go this way? We'll go, and this again, magnanimous as usual. You could pick second if you want.
Yeah,
and I'll take the third pick.
Magnanimous as usual, like pointing
Per
it
the
out.
usual.
Takes away.
Some
it's
say
it's like when you call yourself humble. That has happened recently. I've seen that.
Humble to
I
death.
hate the number 3 position in this, but I'll go
Right.
number 1. I will say, voters aside, like I'm picking the guys that I want on my team, who I like watching in the
For this season.
your
Yes,
funeral.
we
Yeah.
should put the parameters. Like it's right now. It's this season. It's not their career. It's right now.
Right now, entering
right.
September 2023. That's who we're talking about.
This is easy for me. I'm going with the number 1 pick, Christian McCaffrey.
Ooh, you got a from Rosenthal.
No, when you said easy for
Hello.
me,
No, it is.
didn't
It
think
is.
you were going.
Yikes.
Absolutely easy. And like for me, watching what happened in a better environment in San Francisco, the way he was used, doubled my fascination with him. So he's my number 1 pick.
You get him in that Shanahan offense, and Mark starts to get a little tickle in the pants.
That's not untrue.
If you look back, like that draft he was in, I don't know if these guys will come up later, but Cook, Mixon, like you couldn't go wrong in that draft. But McCaffrey, who was the top one, has ended up the best. I'm with you.
I'll just pushback's important in this conversation.
Yeah.
The previous 2 years were compromised by injury, just something to keep an eye on. And also throw out there, he didn't lose a fumble last season. So he's trustworthy with the ball in his hands.
I thought going to say he's due to lose them now. But
Well, maybe there's some of that in there too, but I don't think so. And he had nearly 1,900 yards on the season. He had over 1,200 scrimmage yards in 11 games in San Francisco. Now, is his body going to be able to take that type of usage in another year? That would be my concern, but no one is going to bang on the cess dog for going with
it's a totally
McCaffrey.
fair concern, but I kind of want to just remove that from it because, like, if I'm projecting 17 games, he's the clear best player here.
Availability. It's an important ability.
It's it's actually a skill set to have health. Yes.
Well, I'm also going
Remain
to be operating on a 12-game season, so there's a lot less work to do. You're at it, there's
Interesting. You got engaged this offseason too to that young woman, very attractive, Olivia something or other. It's all coming together for Christian McCaffrey. He really hit the lottery in life. Greg, the second pick.
Danny Amendola's out there just
Culpo, right?
pissed as hell. The one that got away.
She's great.
My number 2 pick is gonna be Bijan Robinson, and I had some other thoughts, but I want like McCaffrey, and so wasn't just the way you prefaced it. I thought you were going in a different direction because of your previous fandom, and I'm going Bijan though because unlike some of the other possible options, like I just think he's going to be so dynamic on all 3 downs, and like it is a passing league, and so that is so important to me. I know his numbers weren't crazy in the passing game at Texas, but I think his skill set is just outrageous. Get the running backs while they're young. I'm happy that he hasn't had any NFL mileage. I know we haven't seen it, and there's a little bit of risk there, but I don't care. I don't think it's that big. I really don't.
Well, I mean, there is a projection there where let's see what happens with him. But I think he was in my top 3.
Okay.
For similar reasons. I mean, I don't really care what they're talking about in May, but he has talked about the fact that Arthur Smith, in early OTAs, has sampled him all over the field, and you can just tell Tyler Algier, massive admiration for him as one of my guys. I think Bijan Robinson is not unlike a Jim Brown early career type person where he could come in and just be ultra dominant and be in offensive player of the year conversations right away.
Right. Like, he really reminds me more than anyone that's come out of Tomlinson and Falk. Both of those guys came into the league and were top players immediately. Tomlinson led the league in touches as a rookie. Falk, I think, was all-pro as a rookie. He had 1,800 yards. Second team all-pro. And I think that's the type of player Bijan's going to be.
Marc Sessler.
I don't like what you're about to do here, I think.
I've woken up and I've chosen violence because I know you want it, but you're not going to get it because I got Nick Chubb with the number 3 overall pick. I think, at a time where we're talking about Jim Brown, it's interesting to think that Chubb is, I think, a little bit underrated.
I think it definitely is.
Especially, as the Browns have kind of gone down after they were on the rise there, and then you had the Deshaun Watson drama, and it kind of just buried everything around Cleveland. So Chubb was just off the radar. But he's just different. Like, if we're talking about, like, what Jim Brown was different, and he was. Like, to me, when Nick Chubb has the ball in his hands and, God forbid, he gets on an offense that's functional with a high-level quarterback, look out. Because he set career highs in all major categories just about. He averaged over 5 yards a carry like you-know-who.
He never hasn't. Every season of his career. Isn't that crazy?
5.6 one season.
So, it's 17 games now, so 1,500 yards isn't quite what it used to be, but still, even in a down year for Cleveland, with quarterback issues throughout the year, he was an absolute stud. He is my pick at number 3 overall, and I kind of love it. I think I would have taken him at number 2 if I had the pick.
I think it helps them this year. It sounds like they're not going to re-sign Kareem Hunt. When you see him on fantasy lists, I feel like Chubb is always lower than the actual player. And what he is to watch visually, he does have little remnants of Jim Brown to me in certain moments, the way he runs. Like, there's just something about his violent, aggressive nature.
No gloves? Does he use gloves?
Well, I'd have to check. I'm not sure if there's a clear answer to that every game. But also, if you go look up, like, Nick Chubb in-game images, he just looks like a running back that you'd create in a laboratory. He completely changed how I felt about the Browns for a chunk of time because of how dominant he was. He harks back to what that team always said it wanted to be in that division, and he was the manifestation of that.
And yet he's not on your team here. It's mine.
Right.
Yeah, well,
he was my
got your ass.
You've made me upset because I actually thought, I always sort of historically thought you were a little bit lower on Nick Chubb.
No, I love Chubb.
So, but
I was lower, I guess, on Mayfield. But Chubb was always
that's clear. But but this is a great pick by you.
Those would have been.
I'm annoyed now.
Chubb and Bijan would have been my top 2. I couldn't really decide, but
Greg runs away with this if you have Chubb and
I'm saying the passing game. He's just not quite as dynamic in the passing game, and so that's just like the tiny knock. But he's the best runner. I would have said if you needed 5 yards and your life depended on it, he would be my number 1 overall.
Well, I'm going to address that with my second pick as we snake around now. And this was between 2 players, but one is more durable and has a less kind of injury history in terms of reconstructive surgeries on the knees and whatnot. Austin Eckler is my pick. And
reach.
Don't say reach. You can't say it because you got to look at the production, which is titanic. I mean, and Saquon Barkley obviously is the other guy I had in mind here. But what Austin Eckler has done just these last 2 years, you understand, even though it didn't work out for him, this attempt to get a new contract and even get moved in a trade, he's a victim of the way the NFL and the decision makers view running backs entering their late 20s. But he's a lock it in. If you want a running back that's going to have 100 catches, he'll give you that. 107 last year. He finds the end zone like nobody else in the league, I think, at this point. I used to think it was Alvin Kamara. Now, to me, the guy, when he has the ball and he's hitting inside the 5-yard line, the guy that's going to get over the goal line is Austin Eckler, and you see that in terms of his touchdowns. What is his number? He has some absurd number of touchdowns in the last 2 years. It's close to 40, I believe. So he's a dynamic.
38 led the league both both years.
38, and he even started a little slow this past season. Fantasy heads will tell you. And he
the
was
running game was a
beast.
bit of a mess, and then he started to cook.
So if you wanted the best all-purpose back in the league, when you factor in everything, including durability, is probably McCaffrey. But if you want to say, well, if you factor in durability, I'm going to say it's Eckler.
107 catches.
It's wild.
I don't know how that slipped past me.
I mean, I guess if part of this is like you're gonna like hard scrabble a defense by literally putting 4 of these runners into the backfield. Like, I love what you've done because you can do literally anything with those 2 players.
He's my third down back.
Yeah, I'm not looking at it that
Chubb's
way,
my hammer.
which is why I said reach at first, because he hasn't had the touch. Although he has the last 2 years, 276 and 311.
He's got it all.
I'm being a jerk. I'm being the same way the Chargers are, not giving him that money. I'm being the same way the NFL was, not drafting him. That you see guys that are physically a little more explosive or younger in the case of Bijan Robinson, and I lean a little more there. But you're right.
All right, let's go, Greg.
All my friends are jerks.
You are up.
I mean,
second pick
didn't seem fair.
Well,
this is tricky. See, I could make a pick that I think would be geared towards winning the vote. But
you're in your head now.
I am.
Don't worry
it's already over.
I know the voters. They would like Saquon. He's frilly, but I don't care.
Frilly.
I'm taking Alvin Kamara.
Oh, that's a bad one.
I trust him more on a down-to-down basis that he can do everything.
Are you factoring in a likely suspension that could wipe out the beginning of his season?
Well, that doesn't count.
Wasn't this based on September 2020?
Based on the Alvin Kamara of right now, so it's a factor for the Saints.
I'm not
maybe
taking
not in your
the suspension.
fictional world.
I thought it's just like we're taking who's the best at playing football.
I don't know, man. He's got some court cases to handle first.
Now you got me.
You think what we got from last year from Alvin Kamara was the best version?
No, he wasn't his best, and so that is a little bit of a concern coming into year 7. I think just comparing him to some of the other running backs that would be available, you could pick little things out of each one of them. And to me, I think Kamara's still got at least one last truly great season. And when you just look at skill sets of what you want in a running back, power, as you mentioned, like shocking power inside the 5-yard line when you need it, make you miss. I don't think his offensive line has been helping him out lately. The receiving skills, to me, he is almost the perfect back. He could almost be the number 1 overall back. He's not coming off like his best season ever, but I still feel good. The suspension, that's BS. I'm not taking
that. Greg, you surprised me with that pick. I don't totally dislike it, but I would not have gone there now.
The real ones out there, they know. The fantasy people that had Alvin Kamara on Christmas night or Christmas Day 2020 when he scored 6 touchdowns and single-handedly lifted, and myself included, thousands and thousands of people to the greatest Christmas gift ever given in a fantasy scenario. I will always have love and respect for Alvin from that standpoint.
That
but
means a lot to him.
Since as you picking him means him, I'm sure. But since the end of 2020, is he a little bit less than? I mean, if you look at some of the numbers, he's come down back. Has he already played his best football? Like, where do the Saints feel about him when you factor in the off the field stuff?
I would also factor in like their quarterback play, like the fact that Sean Payton.
Well, we're
wasn't
not picking fantasy. Oh, you mean in terms of last?
Yeah, but the actual experience of Alvin
I think
Kamara,
it's fair, and I guess I just look at his career arc, and I think he's going to have one great year still left in him. But you're right; they drafted Kendrick Miller, who's kind of like fantasy-wise, he would not be up this high. Like Eckler to me was fairly low on my list, like not in the top 8. But for fantasy, he might be number 1. Whereas Kamara, I sort of would flip him.
Kamara, yeah, and it's in my head a little bit because he averaged 3.7 yards per carry in 21. And last year he recovered a little bit and was better, but he hasn't really performed like a superstar for a couple of years. But you're saying
he's
it's still
passing
in him.
the eye test, I think.
Okay. Mark, you're up. You got 2 in a row here.
All right, I am gonna take Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
As my second running back alongside Christian McCaffrey. Look at you could if I wanted to
he's gonna win.
Argue against myself, it's possible you get both of my first running backs for like 7 games in a season. There is that problem, but I am dismissing that part of it in my world.
And Greg, I heard you just intone that you think it's over. Mark's going to win. I believe this competition will be made and won in the last 2 picks.
Okay.
I think there's probably some people a little down on the Saquon Barkley 5-year journey.
I don't know. I just feel like they're they're shiny names.
They are.
He's still a little too boomer bust for me. I love what Saquon Barkley did last year, but I want more reliability, and I do think he's not as reliable as some of these guys.
I think, again, like I said, it's a question about will he be there, but the version of the player that we saw last year in Brian Daboll's offense with better quarterback play. I mean, finally, the whole offense finally awakened from a 4-year injury-riddled nightmare, and we saw the guy that they drafted back in the day, and I'm going with just going for the ceiling. If you get that, and you get the ceiling of McCaffrey, we're rolling.
I have regrets. I already have regrets.
All right, everybody, pause. Pause this draft. Take a break. We'll finish it out. All right, welcome back.
I'm still in the war room situation here. There's so many different ways I could go here.
We're gonna Vikings you here.
I'm gonna get. I think I'm gonna lose points here because I think people believe that this player is close to the end.
I know where you're going with this.
But I absolutely love watching him, and I think people. I know when they put this out on social, they're not going to say like, "Here's how Mark drafted it." Just going to be like, "We think this guy's beyond the pale." But Derrick Henry.
Okay.
That's my dude. Like, I mean, I just love. He's one of the reasons that I absolutely adored watching the Titans, adored watching their offense, pairing him with Ryan Tannehill. I mean, this year in that offense, we'll see. But the player itself, Derrick Henry, we met him in person. I thought him to be a very likable, impressive in both his personality and
did that factor into the selection?
Yes, because it's like you're going to be working with this player day after day. So Derrick Henry is my pick.
Okay.
And I don't really care what anyone thinks.
Yeah, I mean, then we don't really have to say anything. But there is a reality where the Titans are a bottom feeder in the AFC,
or he gets traded somewhere and has one more fire.
He's incredible. And there's no one like him, but he's a little why I'm not as big on Saquon either. Although I have regrets because I think I might have let my Alvin Kamara love.
You could have gotten him in the third or even fourth round.
Affect me too much. I could have gotten Saquon, who's maybe a little more explosive right now. But the reason I don't love Saquon or Henry is I love Henry, but it's like 1, 1, 1, 1, 3, 7, 21 or whatever, and it's like I don't like all those ones.
The old Barry Sanders logic.
A lot of ones. I mean, at this stage of his career.
Yeah.
That said, there's literally no other player like him.
I remember a lot of things that weren't ones from Derrick Henry.
That's what I mean, but it's like a slow build, and then suddenly.
Then he runs through 7 people.
Does he have?
That's a great point, Mark.
I would ask. Does he have the same burst that he had a couple of years ago before the foot injury? I don't know.
I mean, I think when, like I said,
is he still the same player?
When they look at my list, I think there'll be people they'll think that Derrick Henry was drafted by someone that didn't maybe watch Derrick Henry play.
Yeah, but you got a lot of star wattage here.
Right, yeah.
You're setting up well.
I just believe in him entirely.
I think your team's looking good. It's kind of under the radar. He had the second highest yards from scrimmage of his career last year. Was a better receiver. Led the league in carries again, 3 out of 4 years. So that's a concern that he might break down. But it's not like he wasn't productive. He had 1,900 yards from scrimmage last year. That's crazy.
I think it's a solid pick, Mark.
I do too.
Are you okay with the input and the analysis if it leans positive toward you?
No, I definitely am.
Yeah.
When it does that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Greg, you have to somehow salvage this.
See, it gets a little.
You're kind of you're in the weeds right now.
I'm not. You guys are acting like Alvin Kamara is some sort of bum. I'm taking Jonathan Taylor. I want a big playmaker off the ground here. Let's go.
Oh man.
What?
You're spinning, dude.
No, I'm happy with that.
He's coming off one of the more disappointing follow-up years to a truly great breakout year that anyone can remember. But I'll give you some pop on this one, Greggy. Like if the line is better, if your quarterback Richardson is out of the box, a player, could Taylor regain his form? I think he's like 25.
He's 24 years old. He had 2,100 yards and 20 touchdowns just 2 seasons ago. His production last year was about the fact that he missed games primarily and that his team stunk. And he wasn't popping quite as much early. I think he got better as the season went along. He's a good receiver. He's not a great receiver. But in terms of a ceiling here, I'll take whatever his odds are to lead the league in rushing this year because I know they'll be somewhat long. And to me, he's got a pretty decent chance to lead the league in rushing.
I like it. He probably would have been my next pick too. And I think last year's Colts made it easy to forget about anything any of them had done the year prior. I mean, it was just such a chaotic soup of terrible play, and the line crumbled. It was a year ago we all thought they might be like an AFC title game contender. And I think back now with Shane Steichen, if he is what we think he can be as a coach, Anthony Richardson, like this is a completely different offense and a better line play. And Jonathan Taylor there's no question about the fact that like his career's ahead of him. It's a solid pick.
Yeah, but my offensive line is awesome. He's not playing for the Colts.
There's so many.
We're removing them from, consideration of the team around them.
People, when they see these lists, are not going to understand what's happening with all that.
You kind of have to think how people.
I'm not worried about the people. The people.
You seem
I dare you to vote for me. No one's voting for this team. Screw you all.
Well, you're attempting to run psychological tricks on the people.
I think this is a classic spin out. It's a classic spin out scenario going on. It's a car crash. I'm in a tough spot here because I'm kind of caught between because speaking of people I personally enjoy, I liked having Aaron Jones on the Super Bowl week podcast.
Yeah.
I like him as a player. He does have versatility.
First guy to be discussed at length, but maybe not being picked. You have 2 picks, by the way.
I do. And, and then there's Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs is the rushing champ. And that means something, right?
Hell yeah.
I think so. Tangible proof of ability.
He was really good last year, too.
2 years in a row is probably the question for most everyone.
Like, he was every bit as good as his numbers were.
That's why that thinking ahead front office declined his 5th-year option before the season. They knew what was coming.
Wait, but if these are the only 2 you're debating, just pick the 2.
Yeah, well, it's not that simple, Greggy. But I will go ahead and pull the trigger on Josh Jacobs.
You sound more excited about him. I'm not that excited.
Just because, there's a reason also why the Raiders declined the option. And he didn't, even though he's a first-round pick, he wasn't really shaping up as a special player. But he was absolutely dynamic. I almost wish everybody's talking about now that Devontae Adams spoke out against the offense a little bit. Maybe he'll be moved. That seems like a non-starter because of the dead money involved and what a mess that would be for the Raiders after the fact. Josh Jacobs being used and getting 340 more carries on this Raiders team, does that excite me? Not totally, but his play was so good. He had so many huge runs, game-winning runs, walk-off touchdowns. He was everything you want out of a featured back, 3-down banger, and that's why and even gave him something out in the receiving game, 53 catches, 400 yards.
Great receiver.
I will give Josh Jacobs my pick with number 3. And number 4, I could now. I mean, logically, that makes sense that I would then just pivot to Aaron Jones, but I won't because I want to have a little wild card in here too, and that's why Breece Hall.
I knew you were going to do it.
Is my final pick, and it's a total homer pick, but I want you to go before the knee injury, check that game tape of those final weeks before the injury. You will not find a more electric running back in football. He, as much as Zach Wilson's failures last year and the offensive line injuries, his absence is really what ruined their season because he was just about to take over. He would have been Rookie of the Year, not his teammate, Garrett Wilson. And there's a projection here coming off an ACL, and we'll see his availability and all that. But I am willing to roll the dice and put my faith in modern medicine. Breece Hall, absolutely explosive and exciting, and that's where you go with your 4th pick.
You've now snatched away 2 players that I wanted because of how
Nothing
much
better
I like them.
Than doing
and
that.
I'm with you with Breece Hall.
It's always good to hurt your friends.
Also, I think it's a good team planning. You've got a young player who'll be around for years and ahead. On a 4 running back football team.
Thank you.
With no other positional.
I have a banger in Jacobs.
Wait,
and
who
if he
do
does
they just play? They just play each other. So who's playing defense? I guess they got to play defense too. My team has some two-way versatility.
We have not worked that out.
Defense.
I mean, I'm just saying that there are four running backs just roving the countryside looking for competition.
Basically.
All right, Greg, close out your nuclear disaster.
Shoot, I really was spinning out because, like, I kind of wish I took Jacobs because no one was going to take Taylor anyways, I don't think. Or you weren't.
You could get James Conner here, Greg.
Wait, just I don't know if this will make Greg feel better or worse, but I wouldn't have taken Kamara or Jonathan Taylor, period. Would you have taken either of them?
I would have gone Jonathan Taylor with my
pick
next
4,
pick.
maybe?
Well,
I didn't think about
he was
the
available
whole
to me
strategy.
before, so.
Yeah.
I have inside information. I've done some reporting.
Okay.
Sources close to Mark's computer, which I can see.
Oh my God. That's not.
Some say untoward, but also that's gamesmanship.
Cheating would be another way to look at it. He has this. First of all, I think he was blowing smoke up you with the Brees Hall. He was a little lower on his list. Second,
he was blowing smoke up me?
Yeah, you know. Oh, well, my bad. Bad reporting.
Greg, you're gonna spy
a
on
train
my
wreck
computer.
right now.
I think
accurate.
it's making for good podcasting. My point of this whole preamble was to be Mark and I had the exact same names next anyways, which was Ramondre Stevenson and Aaron Jones. And I hadn't decided which of those two I wanted to take in my mind yet, but we had the same next two up. But I'm going to take Aaron Jones. He was an affable guy, and I do think back, and maybe we'll get to Tybee here, I do think back to Wes's impressions of Aaron Jones, that he just thought he was such a natural, explosive runner. And again, Ramondre's going to be a better fantasy pick. Ramondre's an amazing player. I like them both a lot, but just in terms of the quality that Aaron Jones has put out year after year after year after year, that's actually what makes a great running back. And we know he's not wearing down. I don't think he's gotten worse at all. And he's kept fresh because of the way that they've used him. He is the modern back that the defense does not know what they're going to do on a certain play, and he can do anything. So if I was building a team, I truly would take Jones over Ramondre, even though I love them both.
And there's the other Aaron's gone in Green Bay. That gives me a little bit of pause about how that could negatively impact their running game and I
don't got to worry about that on my team.
Right. I guess we look at it from different perspectives, obviously, but that to me matters in terms of what kind of production he'll have this year. But it's a good pick.
We're just out there. I'm like Mark Malone, the Nuggets coach. Nobody believed in us. No one's talking about us. We're gonna roam the countryside.
He's gonna win the championship,
Kamara,
though. You are not winning anything.
I'm
going
to leave here and completely forget that we created this list. This is going to be a Gregg internal think piece for like the next 24 plus hours because I can tell you're affected by what's.
But Jones, you landed the plane with just a touch of dignity here.
It was fine.
So that's good.
The only thing I made a mistake was strategy. Why I wasn't really thinking what you guys were going to do. You know.
I look at your list, Greg, and there's it's got its qualities. I just don't even know who your number one guy is, to be honest.
It's the guy I took and was going to take first overall, Bijan freaking Robinson.
That's fine, but I mean, you would have taken Kyle Pitts if we did a tight end derby a number of years ago, and you just never know how.
Don't be silly. You had him in your top 3.
You just never know how it's going to go. That's all.
All right, close it out, Mark.
All right. I do find this to be kind of a soup down here because part of me.
You're in a tricky spot.
Well, I mean, it's I can't really lose this year, but like Travis Etienne is very interesting to me. Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker, but I am going to go Ramondre Stevenson. We keep dipping into like what he's going to look like in that offense in New England, but I don't think that matters.
A little surprising.
No, I loved watching him last year, and I think he has a chance to be like yardage wise, top 5, top 4.
I think you can make a pretty good argument. Ramondre Stevenson was a better running back than Brees Hall last year when they were both on the field. He can do everything. He can make you miss. He maybe can't break the huge plays that Brees Hall can, so I shouldn't say that. But in terms of making people, he reminds me a lot of Josh Jacobs, actually. I think he's a very similar
Did they let
player.
Damian Harris go?
They did, yeah.
Yep.
He's in
That's also a benefit to this. But the Patriots are kind of an annoying team in the running backs that he's ready to eat maybe and get the touch. What he had 270,
he had
280
1,400 yards last year from scrimmage, almost 70 catches.
What are the big guys getting? Like the real dogs, like not Derrick Henry level, but like what do you want from touches? Plus 300? Is that what we're talking about?
Oh, absolutely.
He was at 279, 350.
Okay. Maybe gets an uptick. So all right, some guys that didn't get picked. Before we sign off here, I want to hear about.
I really like Travis Etienne.
Travis Etienne's that's a tough omission. Like if you were going to build a fifth team that was off our omits, ETN would be there.
Wouldn't be on mine, but Pollard,
I think
next
should
guy.
be there.
Yeah.
I think
he's coming off the injury.
Dalvin Cook, who's still a Viking, but I don't know about Cook anymore.
I would not have Cook. I think Cook is
Miles
wait and
Sanders.
I think Cook's wait and see. Mixon, I feel like, is cooked.
Najee Harris.
Dalvin Cook played pretty well. I don't think he would make sense for this exercise, but I think J.K. Dobbins, now another year removed from that injury, is ready to emerge. So him and Kenneth Walker would have been on my long list.
I gotta throw it out there, Mark, just because it was a big to-do on our show.
Yeah.
Tyler Algier?
I
Your
think
guy?
I think, if you don't have Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier could have had massive yardage.
But this is kind of a time where he could have used
Tyler
Algier.
Algier.
A little life
He
raft.
is officially your guy.
Imagine throwing him out one of those buoy thing. What is it? The life?
This wasn't
The
that
circular
exercise.
one.
This
is
was
that one thing
the
called?
like DiCaprio on a piece of wood that floats down into the sea. Unfortunately, because he's not. I didn't want
Dinghy?
to pinpoint Tyler Algier, but he's not in my top 4 in this thing.
No, he wasn't on my long list.
Okay.
He's good.
I really
good
I
player,
feel like
but we have, we only got through top 12 in the league. If we did top 20, is he on there? Maybe.
I still believe that Damian Pierce a year from now will be in this exercise.
What is this? Dan is making an arm motion. Are we taping this for YouTube?
It's time.
Eric behind the glass.
I got my Oxford blue on.
Okay.
Smoothing it out.
So if for the YouTube viewers, you should check us out around the NFL podcast. Subscribe.
Absolutely.
What was that motion you were?
Greg keeps telling people what to do.
I mean, every
It does help our
podcast
show. It helps our
mentions
show.
it.
I get that.
We never did
I
in
get
the
where you're
past.
coming from.
I would. It's like it's a TC top from TC Tuggers.
Oh yeah. I should have picked it.
Happy birthday to Link Westling.
3
years old, and I texted Lakeisha today that 3, that's where it really starts to get fun.
Yep.
And they're in St. Louis now, so it would be great to see him. But he's happy. Lakeisha's happy. Greg, you know that because you were in Tybee this past weekend.
Yeah, Lincoln was the star of the weekend. I mean, it was amazing to spend the time with Colleen came and Keisha was down there and seeing all of our friends in Tybee. But I really will remember it as a trip I got to know Link better because I think you're right. 3, you're coming into your own. And he's a good hang. Like he is a good hang. He was there like his dad would have been at every event. We go on the boat, he's driving the boat. We go to the bar, he's having a good time coming outside, bringing all of Wes's friends out with him to go jump on the speed bump.
It's Tybee, of course, there's a 3-year-old at the bar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without, no one's question.
I actually was told at one point, because he was sitting up at a bar, and this was a different place, and of course it was like one of Wes's friends owned this restaurant. It was like, yeah, he can't sit up there, but he can sit at one of the tables. So I was like, okay.
Hey, you got to have limits. You got to have restrictions.
And he's sort of... I've been around a lot of kids.
2 beer minimum.
I love my kids, but sometimes other kids I don't engage as much with, especially when they're younger. But he truly is like a fun hang. And one thing I noticed, and it touched me and Keisha too, like he was really all about Wes's boys. The girls, not so much. Poor Colleen didn't get as much attention. But I think he just liked hanging out with the guys, and he was happier to see me than my kids are happy to see me. And he was like that with a lot of Chris's closest friends, Wayne and Jim, and everyone sort of had their Link moments because he would just grab your hand and go kind of take you off, and you would do things with Link, and it was beautiful. It felt like Chris was there, and he was there through Link, and going down there, you just feel a lot. You guys had that experience. You feel everything. You feel happy. You feel like Wes should be there. You feel sad. It's just like everything together.
Like when you call him a good hangout. I mean, and you mentioned Wes, but Lakeisha is very high on that power ranking too, as always has been. So
let's rank him.
The combined DNA is powerful. I did notice there were some nice shots of you guys riding in a car together, you and Link.
He was driving the golf cart. Yeah, I mean, Keisha.
Well, maybe we should put some guardrails on this.
He was skinny dipping at one point, and you were about 4 inches from his.
Yeah,
buttocks.
breaking news: we have another topless Greg shot that is now.
Oh no!
Yeah, we did.
Surface. Not that we'll share it, Greggy, but just people should know, because it came up recently that there was a topless beach shot of Gregg, which I don't really remember.
Well, it was scrubbed.
But kind of remember.
It got on the radar of multiple NFL employees because I think someone...
What is this?
And this is for maybe some fans out there that just want to picture it. It's Gregg topless in a jacuzzi, and that's a little extra special.
And Link also naked. So actually, his
we crop that out.
Being naked it helps prevent it from getting out. We don't need that. Yeah, we were having fun. We got after it too. I mean, we had fun. You're right about Quiche. I think that gets lost. Maybe our listeners don't even know that. Like, Quiche is one of my best friends. Is one of all of our best friends too. Like, and that it's not because of Wes. It's just they were a combination. They were a powerhouse that was combined together, and so it was a blast.
That's why we were so excited way back in the day when Wes and Lakeisha got together, because Lakeisha had established herself as a powerhouse in the newsroom and a fun hang, and it was like, oh, that makes way more sense than these other randoms that Chris is dating right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were rooting for it, and it was the ideal love story.
It's crazy because it was their anniversary weekend too, and it was the same weekend. I went there 5 years ago, and so there is a heaviness to it. It's not the same without Wes being there, but we felt like being there and having fun with all his friends. I love his friends, and everyone popped up, during the weekend. Jason, who was his officiant, who lives nearby, no longer in Tybee, came by for a little bit, and we saw Wayne and Rosie a lot and everyone. But it was 5 years ago that it's great. I've been there 4 times in 5 years. Once was to celebrate Wes getting over cancer. Once was the wedding. Once was celebrating his life after he died, and then this was the 4th, and it's insane what's happened over those 5 years. But we appreciate all the people that have been along for the ride.
Yep. And this is this podcast is, it's about family, and it's about the connections that we have on the show and we built through the years, and so having Lakeisha in our lives and Link in our lives, it matters, and listeners know that the people that are important to the show matter. But that's nice. That's very nice. And Lakeisha is coming out again to LA, and we're going to get to hang out with her. Got a little event set up next week.
Yeah.
And she'll be there as well. So.
Oh, that's next week.
Oh, yeah.
This off season's going quickly.
All right. That's it. Thank you to everybody behind the glass for your patience. A lot of yammering, other stuff. We'll be back Thursday, perhaps with a very special guest. Until then, as Chris said, heed the call.